Right, get it all. Right, so moving along to Surah 60, which is Surah Mumtahinah. Right, this meaning is the the surah which examines, right? The surah which examines, right? Or the examination of something, right? The examination of something, right? Um, so the first verse opens with the concept of an enemy, right? What do you consider an enemy? Who do you consider your enemy, right? So this is regarding things that you are set, like ironclad belief systems. You have an ironclad belief system. This cannot change, right? And so you consider everybody else who do not participate in that belief system as an enemy to you, right? And this is what we are, our mindset. We are trying to change concept of enemy, right? It's a concept here in the Quran. It is a concept also in the Bible. It is a concept also in the Bhagavad Gita, right? With the Bhagavad Gita opening with war and so on, right? So this is a concept in reaching or in reaching to a peaceful society. We are trying to change this concept of what do you see as an enemy, who do you see as an enemy that you just want to eradicate off the face of the planet for no reason at all, right? Simply by virtue of a person not adhering to your ironclad belief system, right? So it's a process, right? And there are two requirements that I have just thought of, and it is in the book as well, right? That two qualities or characteristics of us that we need to address if we want to do away or to change this concept of what is called enemy, right? Or enmity between us as people, right? One, you need to have willingness to change. And that change is an evolutionary change, meaning that it's a slow process, right? It's not an overnight process. Two, the willingness for the other party or the so-called enemy to have patience with you, right? So two requirements to change this concept of what an enemy is, or change the whole concept of an enemy, right? So that we can move forward in peace, right? Even if you're not affectionate or friend with the person, you don't have to be friend with everybody you meet, right? But the concept is to coexist in peace with those who you previously considered your enemy. And there are two requirements for this. One, the willingness of one party to change something in themselves, and two, the willingness of the other party to be patient with that process, right? So, and vice versa. The change and the patience could be vice versa or exist in the two parties, two existing camps or groups or those that were previously enemies towards each other, right? So there are those who wish that you would disbelieve, right? And you don't have to pay any mind to that, right? So 3, ask Allah forgiveness for your parents. If your parents have hurt you in the past, right, or is hurting you currently, right, one of the things that Allah is asking you to do is to seek forgiveness for your parents, and vice versa. If your child or children are hurting you or have hurt you in the past, know that your child and your parent in some scenarios, in certain scenarios, are only but a test, nothing else, right? In some scenarios, right, Allah uses your parent as a test to test you, and in some scenarios, Allah uses your child as a child to test you, right? So this of course does not mean to say you go about, if you're in a family relationship, you go about viewing your child as a test and your parents as a test, and that's the only relationship you have with them, and that's the only bond and so on that they are being used for. That's not to say that. It's just that I'm saying that in certain scenarios, and I'll use some of us as examples, and in certain scenarios, your child might be your test to you, your parents might be a test to you, right? So to Allah, you have returned, and to Allah is the final destination, right? So asking God to not make us objects of torments, right? Even if people are disbelievers, is to have patience with them until Allah chooses to, or Allah uses somebody to show them and say, hey, well, this way that you've been going is wrong. This is a more appropriate way, right? And have that person figure out that on their own, that will be their test. That will be the disbeliever, a test for what is considered a disbeliever in the eyes of Allah, right? That's not for us to judge and take action upon like that, right? So there has been an excellent pattern, right, in others around you. There has been an excellent pattern, right? You may not be, it may not be in your immediate environment, it may be in your immediate environment, it may not be in your immediate environment, but Allah will bring together souls or beings, right, in whom there have been an excellent pattern, right, for you to adopt certain qualities, or find certain qualities or ways of being, right, that might be closer to him, right, or what he requires of you, right? Perhaps Allah will put between you and those whom you have considered your enemies affection, right? So this is what I was talking about, and when I open, right, saying that, hey, there are certain characteristics for this to there are certain requirements, right, for this to happen, for this verse to come into fruition, that Allah will put between you, maybe, and those whom you consider enemies affection, right? And that won't happen just like that. Like I said, there are requirements, and there's a process, and there's evolution, right? And there's a process for these things to occur, and it requires a form of action on our part, right? Right. So we are striving to what? Not fight others down on the basis of their religion, knowing that all religions actually, the basis of all religions actually lead to the same thing. And this is what we want to understand, right? The basis of all religion leads to the same thing. What we want to get away from is to be worshipping objects other than our one God, right? Worshipping people and objects other than our one God, right? Right? So, and the reason I'm saying this is that these souls are beings who incarnate on earth, right, and do not want that worship, right? So that is why I'm saying this. That's the only reason, right? So Allah knows who is most known. Allah is most known as to your faith, right? So like I said, this journey and this teaching of the Quran is about what? Faithfulness, right? In my teaching of it. And I wanted to suggest something to you all. You don't need anybody to test you, right? Angels, demons, other humans, whatever, right? Allah may use these things and entities and people to test you, but you don't need somebody else to test you. You can't test yourself, right? Way you could do this is to read the Quran, right? Talking to people who have a problem, struggling with the concept of being faithful to a particular person in a relationship, you're having problems being faithful to a person, and so on, right? Read the Quran, hold your person, whether it be your wife, whoever you are, your commitment person, right, whoever it be, right, hold that one person in your thought whilst you read out the entire Quran, and that way Allah judges you and your faithfulness, and you don't need mankind to judge you, right? Read the Quran, right, and hold that one person, right, that one being, right, in your mind and in your heart, right? And of course there will be things coming from all angles, right, to distract you from that, and it might be packaged in a very attractive way, right? Hold that one individual, or it doesn't have to be a person. For example, you could be committed to stopping a vice, right, whether it's too much sex, whether it's too much alcohol, whether it's too much cigarette, right? The point is to hold that concept, right? Hold that concept in your mind, right? Whilst you read from Surah 1 to Surah 114, right? Teach Surah 1 to 114 while holding that concept, right? The concept in your mind, right? And you will find that at the end of that process, right, you will give up that thing. You will ease up on that thing. You will become a better person, right? It is no if and buts about it. It is a will, right? It is no if and buts about it. It is this will happen, and I'm telling you, it will happen. It will happen. WILL will, right? It will happen, right? Hold that concept of that thing that you want to do in your mind, Read from Surah 1 to 114 and then teach it, and it will happen, right? So right, know that if you lose something that you value, someone that you value, something, I don't even know what this is, someone, but if you lose something that you value, it is said that Allah tests you with your wealth, with your family members. So some of us might experience death, some of us might experience the loss of wealth, so on. If you are tested by virtue of this and you lose something, right, Allah is going to replace it with something better. Just have patience, right? So that closes the Surah 60, and we will move on to 61, right? God's willing, tomorrow, right? Right. Take care, everybody. Have a good day.